So buying a house with the friends, aka using as a co-borrower, because of the home affordability is so low, home price is so high, the interest rate is so high, a single person, it's really hard to buy a home. But if you buy with a friend, what he can do, what it means. And we're gonna focus in on the lending side, few key points that you should keep in mind. So I have Evan Swanson, one of my favorite loan officer here. So Evan, tell me how buyers should prepare and what's the main key difference when you are buying with your buddy, not your partner, not with your fiance.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thanks for having me, Shawn. And I think this is a great topic, and it's one that I think will probably gain more and more attention because, as you said, we've seen such a rapid increase to interest rates, right? So, mortgage rates 24 months ago were 3%. Now they're up around 7%. So you've seen a 4% increase to interest rates. And for every 1% that mortgage rates increase, it's as if that home had appreciated by 12%. Okay. So let me repeat that. For every 1% that interest rates increase, it's as if rates stayed the same, but homes appreciated by 12%. So we've had 4 percentage point increases from those 3% interest rates, which means homes are 48% more expensive than when they were 3%. And yet, if you look at home prices, they've barely budged, right? So affordability, unfortunately, is a gigantic issue right now. And buying a home with another person, a friend, can be a great way to help mitigate that, because if one person on one income can't afford, then hopefully maybe buying with another person and two incomes can help them buy. And if that's the alternative to not buying or continuing to rent, then I think there can be some real benefits there. So the main point, Shawn, is obviously you bring another person to the fold. You're also bringing in their financial resources. Oftentimes that's going to help a person borrow more money and increase their purchasing power in a market where that's a real problem.
Mhm. It's basically, splitting the cost, the
Yeah.
mortgage, down payment, the earnest money, the closing cost. The idea is great, and I could see like friends, but obviously you have to really know this friend. You
Yeah.
can't just buy a house with somebody who you just met at a bar. I mean, you
Right.
you probably were like a previous roommates. You've been in sports team that you know this person well,
Yeah.
and respect and trust,
Yeah.
because home buying is a lot of responsibility. And so I think let's just jump into the right, the having some kind of agreement.
Yeah.
What's the exit strategy when one of the friends don't pay the mortgage? What happens? And so those things are, I think, important to have some kind of legal document set up, because
Yeah.
doing business with friends, it can go south pretty well,
Yeah.
right? Or it can be
I mean,
successful too.
it's sort of like almost thinking like a prenup, right? A
Mm,
prenup agreement in a marriage where, you sort of everyone agrees up front when there's something that happens, this is how it's going to go down at that point before there's vested interest to change in time. And, part of the problem or part of the difficulty of buying a home with another person is both the asset you're buying as well as the mortgage you're taking are jointly held,
mhm.
but they're undividable, right?
Right.
So, you could, two people, two friends go together, they buy a house, right? And they have an agreement that says, hey, we're doing everything 50-50. So I own 50% of the house, you own 50% of the house. I'm paying 50% of the mortgage, you're paying 50% of the mortgage.
Right.
Cool, that's great. But if one party pays 50% of the mortgage one month and the other party doesn't, and foreclosure process starts, the bank
Hmm.
doesn't care. They're not,
Hmm.
they can't foreclose on half the house, right? And so, the challenges come in the fact that just at its basic fundamental level, this is a partnership in which you are acquiring a jointly held asset that is undividable. And so, yes, to your point, there needs to be some thought
Hmm.
into how you resolve various issues. Maybe someone's ready to move on into a different house and the other person isn't. So how do you handle that situation?
Hmm.
Maybe there's an illness. Maybe there's a job change.
Right.
Maybe people have disagreements about how the home should be maintained, right? So
Hmm.
to your point, it is very important that people who go into this type of partnership see the value in that partnership and the fact that, hey, this is the partnership that's going to allow me to achieve home ownership when I otherwise can't. But you also need to take a pretty serious look at who you're going into business with, so to speak, and making sure that you see eye to eye and feel like you can trust that person, and have an open dialogue about how that management should move forward.
Hmm. How often do you see this kind of borrowers?
Not, what's funny, Shawn,
Hmm.
is not as often as you might imagine, right? I
Yeah.
mean, again, I think this is a great, potential problem solver to the issue that many, especially young borrowers, face is this affordability issue. And one of the ways to overcome that is, like you said, split those costs, split those
Hmm.
barriers to entry, split those payments, and now it becomes, much more manageable
Yeah.
and potentially even affordable.
Hmm.
So I don't have any statistics on how many people are doing this. We've
Hmm.
certainly facilitated clients in these partnerships in the past, but it's not something I see all that often. What about you? Have you come across it?
No, I mean the couples, young couples who are not married, they're not even engaged, but they're couples, right? So they
Hmm.
already live together in an apartment. They already have a pet or two. So that's a different story. But so I just did a Google search, and apparently in 2023, about 14% of the buyers co-bought a home with a friend, while
Hmm.
12% co-bought with a relative other than their spouse or partners. So
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty interesting. I don't know where these are. I would think that like big cities like New York City, Seattle, LA, San Francisco, things are way more expensive. So I could
Right.
see roommates teaming up. But looking at let's see, the other one that I saw, that was that, and then I
That's
looked
a
at,
higher number than I would have guessed.
yes.
14% is a higher figure than if you would have asked me over under,
Yeah.
I would have definitely taken the under.
No, totally. That's 1 out of 10 buyers, basically, right?
Yeah.
One thing to note that is that co-borrower and co-signer are two very different things, right? So co-signers can be your parents who don't have the ownership of a property, but giving more of a buying power to your kids. But co-borrower is like you own that 50-50%, tenant in common, is
Mhm.
it? Yeah. So one thing that I wanted to add, the reason why you might consider this is to get into a home ownership sooner than later. So
Mhm.
when I did the rent versus buying thing, 7-year mark is when you start making money. So the calculation that I did was like $2,500 a month on the rent,
Mhm.
like $4,000 on mortgage payment.
Okay.
However, you do the appreciation at 3.5% on the
Mhm.
house home price appreciating versus 2.5% rent appreciating. In
Yeah.
7 years, the difference, I actually made a post on my tweet. You start gaining, make about $9,000 on the seventh year. So after that, anything else, it's just you're just saving more money every year compared to renting. So that's the opportunity that I want young people to catch
Yeah.
rather than waiting until you're 38, 39, 45 years old. What if you were be able to buy with your friend, just gain 50% of this equity building with your buddy, and end goal is to have a same sort of like, okay, we're not gonna do a buyout. I'm not gonna take it over and you cut you a check when you want to get your half share. We're just gonna sell it. That kind of clear goal at the end in mind, then the thing is, it's way better than renting because of the equity and the principal reduction and everything. So
Hmm.
that's why I think it could be one of those, financial tool that you like to talk about. Like 30-year mortgage
Yeah.
is one of the great financial tools. I actually retweeted about that on your, video that you made,
Yeah.
which is great because the bank cannot change the mortgage rate in the early years.
Right.
So this is definitely one way to get into home ownership way before you can afford by yourself.
Yeah.
The other thing actually I wanted to talk to you about is using one of your friend as a roommate. So for example, if you have a friend who have, roommate history with you before, but your friend isn't at the same sort of financial, stage in his career or life, so he
Mhm.
can maybe pay like $900 on a room sharing. Um, my understanding is that as long as you have the lease agreement, you as a sole buyer buy a home with your buddy's lease agreement, him paying you the rent. Am I correct on that?
In some instances, that is true.
Hmm.
Not all loan programs allow for that. But yes, there are some loan programs that even if you haven't owned a home in the past, or even if you haven't claimed rental income on your tax returns,
Hmm.
if you have a history of having roommates that pay you rent, then in some cases, and we can document a history of it, then in some cases we can project that out with the home you're going
Right,
to buy, assuming that that roommate's going to follow you. And that
right.
is a tool that we have utilized, yeah, absolutely, in the past. Shawn, I want to ask you something you brought up
Yeah,
before we started recording here, and I think is a fantastic idea. But a situation where maybe friends go in and buy a multifamily property, maybe it's a
yeah.
duplex or a threeplex or a fourplex, and that's timely because late last year, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac changed their underwriting guidelines that now allow owner occupied financing on two, three, and four unit properties with a minimum of 5% down.
5%.
Prior to that change, it was 20 to 25% down. So it used to be that only FHA was a financing tool for that transaction. Now conventional loan options allow for that, and that allows people to still come together and own together.
Hmm.
It still allows them to have their distinct living space. And it also, I think, in some cases, can make the what happens if conversation easier, right?
Hmm.
Maybe there's one friend that's ready to move on. Maybe they find a partner and they decide they're going to get married or they're going to move in together and they're ready to move out of the plex. Well, great. They can replace that with rent from a third party, and still not leave the existing homeowner out to dry, the one who's going to
Hmm.
stay. And so I think that idea is a fantastic one.
Yeah. I could see like triplex in the Portland Metro. You could probably find somewhere in like $700,000 ish. So it's a triplex.
Mhm,
It means like two bedroom, one bath, and you get through like three of those, right? So you
mhm,
have two other friends, like three friends, three amigos, power up for 5%. Like you basically save like close to 2% each. You could actually
mhm,
make that 5%, which 6%, 1% extra for closing costs or whatever. So $700,000. If one person save about $14,000 each,
mhm.
theoretically, you can qualify for this using this 5% down payment, get something, and it's kind of like buying a small condo without the HOA fees, which hurts
Yeah.
the homeowners
Well,
so much, right?
well, not only that, if we take that math and say, okay, $700,000, you get effectively three condos that are two bedroom, one bath.
Yeah.
Okay. The per unit cost on that, about $183,000. Where can you find a two bedroom, one bath condo for $183,000 in the Portland metro area?
How did you get the 183?
700,000. Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. It would be greater than that. 200. Let's try
Oh,
that again. Let's try that again. It would be about
235-ish.
233,000. Excuse
Yes,
me,
33.
$233,000 per unit. You're right.
Right.
200 per unit. Either way,
Yeah.
you're buying a two bedroom, one bath condo essentially, without an HOA oversight, without an HOA budget that mandates certain things.
Hmm.
For 233,000. I haven't seen a two bedroom, one bath condo for 233 in the Portland metro area for some time.
And not often. Maybe like 3, 4 years ago. If you find those $250,000 condos, their HOA fee is going to be like $700 a month.
Right.
That's
Right.
why they don't appreciate that much. But so yeah,
Okay.
going back to the idea of like getting multiplexes, it kind of opens up a question in my mind. We always look at this residential side of real estate, which is up to fourplex, right? Once it goes beyond fourplex, it becomes commercial property. It would be kind of interesting idea to kind of look at what if a baseball team. I know you play baseball. I I hear the baseball buddies are super close. What if like 12 guys? I think you mentioned that the limit on one loan can be 12 people. What if 12 guys go out and buy a 12-unit apartment? Do you think that's workable? I mean, it's probably 12 unit, probably like 1.5, $1.8 million. You can find one in the Portland Metro, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I would assume call Shawn Realty. He'll find it for you tomorrow. I mean, certainly,
Yeah.
I think more cooks in the kitchen could ultimately maybe make the
Mm,
partnership a little more difficult to manage for sure.
right.
But sure, that sounds like a fun experiment if nothing else.
Right. So that's where the captain of the team says, "Hey, look, we have this share, and when you have that many people, like slicing up one twelfth of a slice of pie, 1 unit, they could probably come up with certain cash or something to have them buy out, right? So you just give them a cut, and then they can just take that 1/12 of the proceed, and then they can go find something else, or they can continue. But when it comes to like a duplex, uh, buyout can be kind of difficult. So I thought this was a good idea in the very low affordability time, high interest rate environment, super unaffordable for people, especially young people. I think it's a great way to get into ownership way sooner, like 7 years before. As like when you invest in stock market when you're 25, that gains so much more because of the compounding effect than starting at 45, let's say, right? So that's the same idea. I just wanted to give you a call and I said, like, let's make this video. So any last thoughts that you want to add onto this video so people can, kind of think about it and chew on it?
Well, I think that had you been the captain of my baseball team, Shawn, I'd have been a much wealthier person today than I am now. But no,
Mm,
I think it's a great idea, and I think that this will become a more common arrangement moving forward, based on what we're seeing in terms of affordability. And I know that working with you over the years, you are a great resource for people, and you're going to tell people the good, the bad, and the ugly, and have transparency in your dealings and advise them as you would advise your own family. So
right.
I think if you're watching this video and have interest in this topic, reach out to Shawn Yu. He's a great
Yeah.
guy.
Same thing with you, Evan. I mean, we've been doing business together for more than a decade now. I'll put the contact information on the description, and if you like this video, hit the like button and subscribe. Evan, thanks so much for your time.
Shawn, it's great to see you, buddy. Thank
All
you.
right, see you. Have a good day.